Welcome back, everybody. This is the second part of our video on the digestive system. You may remember that in the last video, we had just finished making chyme in the stomach, and now the food exists as a slurry, as a bunch of small solid particles suspended in a liquid medium. And it is about to pass into the small intestine. So let's see what happens next. The small intestine is where the majority of chemical digestion occurs. And what that means is that the macromolecules in the food are turned into building block molecules, and then they are absorbed into the bloodstream. The liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas play important roles in the digestive process, and we will learn about the anatomy in the next slide. Various enzymes are going to be introduced through both the pancreas and the lining of the small intestine, and they're going to be what digests the food particles into building block molecules. We call the secretions of the pancreas pancreatic juice, and we call the secretions of the lining of the small intestine intestinal juice. The enzymes that are introduced include proteases, which break down proteins, nucleases, which break down nucleic acids, lipases, which break down lipids, and carbohydrases, which break down sugars. Let's just review the role of the liver and the gallbladder. The liver produces bile, and it's then stored in the gallbladder, and this bile is introduced into the chyme in order to aid with the digestion of fats, and we'll see how that occurs in just a few minutes. And the pancreas, its major role is to produce digestive enzymes and also increase the pH of the chyme. In other words, the pH of the inside of the small intestine is back up at around 8. And not at the low pH of the stomach. So here's what the anatomy looks like. Here is the upper section of the small intestine. That has a name you'll have to learn called the duodenum. And you can see the pancreas, which is a gland, is associated with the duodenum. And the pancreas has a duct which collects these enzymes, and it's going to empty into the duodenum. In addition, the gallbladder, which stores bile, has a duct that comes down and joins the pancreatic duct and then empties bile into the duodenum as well. Let's talk for a second about the duodenum. It is usually a C-shaped section of the small intestine. It occurs just downstream from the stomach. I showed you the duct that receives fluid from both the gallbladder and from the pancreas. And as I've already said, the pancreas supplies digestive enzymes and sodium bicarbonate, which raises the pH, and the gallbladder supplies bile. Now let's talk for a second about the digestion of fats. Fats are hydrophobic. That means they do not dissolve easily in water, and instead they tend to clump together in an aqueous medium. And you've probably seen this when you've tried to make salad dressing. And if fats are clumped together, that means that lipases can only attack the outside of a large clump, and it's not a very efficient way to get all the energy that is inherent in fats. So as a result, waste products from the liver are turned into this substance called bile, and bile has the ability to emulsify fats. Emulsification means that it causes the fat droplets to break up and become suspended in water. And here's a picture of that. Here's a giant fat globule, and you can see what's called the bile salt here is able to attach on its hydrophobic end to the fat, and then it has a hydrophilic end which allows it to stay suspended in water. And so fat droplets get coated with bile salts, and this allows, of course, more surface area for the lipases to attack, and results in the extraction of more building block molecules from the fat. Here is the anatomy of the small intestine. You can see we've removed the stomach up here, and here is the C-shaped duodenum. The next big long section is called the jejunum, and then finally the small section at the end that empties into the large intestine is called the ileum. And we will be able to see all three of these sections when we do a pig dissection. Once the building block molecules have been liberated from the food, they are absorbed into the bloodstream. So we're going to have to look at how that happens. The small intestine has 4 adaptations that increase the surface area, and that's where the absorption occurs. So let's look at those 4 adaptations, and then we'll discuss how the building block molecules get from the inside of the small intestine to the bloodstream. First, the small intestine is very long. That means there's a lot of surface area through which absorption can occur. Second, the internal surface is ridged, and I'll show you a picture of this in a second. You can think of those as gently rolling hills on the inside of the small intestine, and that has the effect of increasing surface area. Third, the ridges are covered in finger-like projections called villi, which wave through the chyme. And fourth, the villi are covered in small hair-like projections, and these increase the surface area tremendously and create a lot of surface for absorption. Inside each villus is a capillary network. That is a network of small blood vessels, and the building block molecules are going to be transferred to them and then distributed around the body. So here now is a picture of what I'm talking about. Notice that we have the small intestine and it is long, and notice the rolling, ridged hills of the small intestine. Next, notice that the ridges are covered in these finger-like projections, and here's a single villus, the finger-like projection, with several more villi in the background. And you can see that not only are there these microvilli on top of them, which increase the surface area, but inside is a capillary network, which is where once the cells of the villi absorb the nutrients will then be transferred to the bloodstream and distributed around the body. And here's an actual micrograph of a single villus coated in microvilli. The final stage of the flow of food through the intestinal system occurs in the large intestine. When the chyme reaches the large intestine, digestion is complete, and most of the building block molecules will have been absorbed. So the large intestine's major job is to form the waste product, the feces, by removal of water from the chyme. And you can understand why that would be important, because why would you want to eliminate all this useful water when you could just recycle it and not have to drink as much, right? It makes a lot of sense from a conservation point of view to recycle the water that's in the chyme. The large intestine also has a large number of microbes in it, especially E. coli. E. coli produces vitamin K, which is absorbed into the body along with the reabsorbed water, and vitamin K is an essential vitamin for human beings. In addition, all of the bacteria in the intestine, including E. coli, which are collectively referred to as microflora, protect the human body from pathogenic bacteria that might enter through the anus, and therefore might be able to gain an entry point into the body and attack cells. So the microflora play a very important role in protecting us from disease. Here is a picture of the large intestine. It has 5 parts: the ascending colon, the transverse colon, the descending colon, the sigmoid colon, which means the S-shaped colon, and then the rectum. And there is also a 6th part, which is mostly vestigial from the digestive point of view, called the appendix, which is a blind pouch at the entry point of the large intestine. And it is important in the immune system for humans, so it is not entirely vestigial, even though at times you might hear that it is. So that's it for today. What I hope you understand about the digestive system is the following: that mechanical and chemical digestion causes building block molecules to be liberated from the food. The main strategy employed is to break the food into teeny pieces, which will then allow for efficient separation of the building block molecules from the macromolecules by enzymes that are released into the chyme. Each major organ, the stomach, the small intestine, and the large intestine, plays a distinct role in the process, which we reviewed today and you should know now. And once the building block molecules have been liberated, they're small enough to diffuse across the cell membranes on the inside of the small intestine and then into the bloodstream. Food not digested is expelled from the body as feces after most of the water has been removed from it. So you have some studying to do today. After you've done that, go outside, take a look at nature, ask biological questions, bring them back to class, and I'll see you then.